Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Well, I have a little bit of an interesting project today, at least for me. I've got this 5-inch Wilton machinist vise that I'm getting ready to sell this. But before I do, I need to address something that really needs to be taken care of. Well, the jaws on this thing are in pretty rough shape. I think whoever owned this thing before me must have wailed on this thing for years with a hammer in ways that really shouldn't be. The top of these jaws are just chewed to bits. And I wouldn't really feel comfortable selling this vise with these jaws in this condition. Of course, I could just flip them over and put the bottom sides up, and I suppose that's legitimate, but it seems a little bit cheeky to me. But instead, I've got this piece of A2 tool steel that I think will be a good start for some replacement jaws. Well, unfortunately, it's just a little bit too narrow for me to get full width jaws on it. It's got plenty of thickness, but not quite wide enough. So I'm going to have to take this over to the bandsaw and cut off a piece of this, and then we'll go from there. Well, that took a lot longer than I would have liked. One of these days I got to rig up a hydraulic downfeed on this bandsaw. That took way too much time. Well, that's the first rough cut. Now I need to go ahead and cut this down into some smaller pieces for the jaws. Well, to cut this down further, I'm going to use a tool I have never used before, a slitting saw. Well, a while ago I picked up this arbor at an auction. It was just in a bunch of other rusty junk that I bought, and it's called a flush mount arbor. It allows you to mount cutting tools so that the bottom of them is flush. There's no like bolt or anything that's holding on the piece from the underside. So in this case, I'm going to stack up a bunch of spacers in order to use it with a slitting saw. Well, the secret to this arbor is not just the sleeve that I put on first, but then this conical washer. That goes on the top and it fits right inside that sleeve. And as I tighten down this screw, it causes that sleeve to spread. And the more it spreads, the more it grips on the inner bore of whatever cutting tool you have on here. So it's on there good. Well, I have the tool mounted in the spindle, and here I'm just going to touch off on the top of the stock here so I can set my DRO up and raise the knee to where I'm taking off enough material in order to make one jaw. Well, I have everything set. I've got the height set and getting ready to cut this using a little bit of anchor lube. And to be honest, I was a little reluctant on whether or not I was going to leave this footage in. But my channel is all about transparency. I really try to show as much as I can as to what happened. And this is not a how-to channel because this did not go well. And I'm just going to edit out some of the junk in between, but I think you'll see what I'm talking about. Well, there's not a bit of this that sounds right. It doesn't feel right. You know, I've used some speeds and feeds calculators, and I feel like I have everything set right. The cutter feels like it's sharp. Maybe it's the A2 tool steel and the combination with these cutters, but this is just not going well at all. I laugh every time I watch this back. If any of you still watching, still think I know what I'm doing, well, maybe this is proof that I don't. So let me tighten up that tool and try this again. The conventional milling seemed to be a bust, so let's try some climb cutting and see if this does any different. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Well, maybe it was the slitting saw. I'll try another one. Yeah, because that's going to work, right? Well, I've tried different RPMs, I've tried different feed rates, I've tried different cutters. Nothing's working here, so I don't know. Maybe it's these cutters are not suited for this particular material. But you know, I think I'm going to go back to the bandsaw. And even though it took 40 minutes to make that first cut, I think if I put a little weight on the bandsaw, I might be able to shorten that time just a little bit. Well, I put a little bit of weight on the bandsaw, and that certainly did cut the time down to about 10 minutes for each of these cuts. So they turned out really good. There's still some, like, I'm assuming this is probably some kind of anti-rust material paper that's still stuck to it. So a little bit of acetone here to clean that off, and then we'll get it back over to the Bridgeport and not use a slitting saw and try to mill these down to something a little closer to their final size. I'm going to start with a roughing end mill and just to take off some of the extra material that I don't need. I could probably feed this a lot faster, but after my recent experiences with the slitting saw, I don't know that I want to take a whole lot of chances in ruining this end mill. It's actually a really nice end mill. I've used it many times in the past. And again, I don't know if all of that havoc was because of the A2 or if it's, mostly due to my incompetence. Well, I milled down both sides of this to where I'm a little bit closer to final dimension. I'm going to go ahead and put in a 4-flute end mill here to give me a better finish. Take a quick measurement. I'm going for 1 inch, 250 thousandths, so I have just a little bit of material left yet to remove. Well, let's see where I'm at. I'll take a quick measurement here. It looks like we have about 2.5 thousandths to go, and if I look at the DRO, that's just about where it's at. So let's raise the knee up here till this reads 1 inch 250 thousandths, and we'll take a finish cut. Well, after that short moment of celebration, we can move on with another milling operation here, and we'll get the sides nice and square and get it milled to length. Well, we'll use a micrometer here again, just kind of striving for accuracy. And I'll take this value and put it into the DRO and then move the x-axis of the table until I get to 5 inches. Well, it looks like I'm about 2 thousandths undersized, which is fine. I don't really need this level of accuracy, but quite honestly, it never hurts to try. I took care of milling the other jaw off camera. Well, that's the milling of these complete. Now these are to size. Now these are going to be a little bit thicker than the original jaws, but I think I'm okay with that. I thought about milling these down so that the thickness matched, but I kind of like having the extra thickness there. Now I need to locate where these mounting holes are going to be. I used some gauge pins and a micrometer and determined that the distance between them is 2.382 inches. And of course, half of that's going to be 1.191, and that's what I'll use in the DRO to locate each of these holes. We'll be going off of the center as our datum. Since both of these jaws will be identical, I'm setting up a mag base here as a vise stop. So when I swap out the jaws, they'll both be in exactly the same position. Well, because these are a very symmetrical hole pattern. I'm going to minimize some tool changes here by only changing the tool when I need to. So I'm going to start by spotting all of the holes here with this 1/4 inch spotting drill. Now only barely touch these first 2 hole locations. I just want to come in here with a dial caliper, do a sanity check, just to make sure my measurements are what I am hoping they will be, and it looks like they're pretty daggone close, pretty spot on actually. And now I feel pretty comfortable spotting these for real. So we'll respot these 2 locations, and then we'll do the second jaw too. Well, with the spotting done now, I can switch over to the clearance hole drill size for the socket head cap screw. Yeah, I know I'm breaking some sort of rule here by putting an end mill in a drill chuck, but I'm going to be using this more as a drill than I am as an end mill anyway. I'm just going to use this to bore out the clearance hole for the head of the socket head cap screw. Well, you can't really see it because it's off camera, but what I'm doing here is I'm trying to locate basically the Z0 by using the stop on the quill. I've got the quill stop now set so that when I bring it down, it will only go as far as the top of the jaw here that you're seeing. So now what I'm going to do is raise the knee the amount that I want to drill into, and then when I drill with this end mill, it will stop at the correct depth. Well, I'm switching over here to a chamfering bit. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring the bit down and use the quill stop to raise the knee so that all of the chamfers are exactly the same depth. Well, I decided I want to chamfer the inner clearance hole, so I've got a smaller chamfering bit in the drill chuck, and I'm just trying to touch that edge of the inner bore. And while I have it in here, I might as well flip over the pieces and chamfer the back end of that bore. Last operation I need to do here on the Bridgeport is to bore the holes for the locating pin that is right in the center of the back of the jaw. Well, that's all of the drilling operations complete. So now I got to turn my attention to the knurling and how I'm going to cut that. Well, I have a Starrett protractor here, and with it set up on one of the cleaner edges of the original jaws, it looks like these were cut at a 30-degree angle. Now, I've seen knurls like this cut on Bridgeports. I've seen them cut on shapers, and I've also seen them cut on horizontal mills, which is the option I chose. I've got them set up here in a vise that's angled at 60 degrees. I've got a 1, 2, 3 block underneath them, and I have a 60-degree V cutter in the spindle. Well, to get started, I want to line up this cutter with the very corner of the jaw that's most forward to me. I'm going to be spacing each of these knurls about 100 thousandths apart from each other, and because the dial on the saddle is calibrated in 250 thousandths increments, it'd be too much of a pain to try to always do that math. So I've got a dial indicator here set up on the saddle, and I'll just use it to move in the 100 thousandths after each pass. Got the spindle going here, and I want to touch off on the surface here so I can set my depth of cut. I think these knurls are going to need to be about 30 thousandths of an inch deep. At least that's the best I can estimate by looking at the original jaws. With the knee raised 30 thousandths, I can take a quick pass here, and we'll take a look at it and see if I think it's going to be deep enough. Well, I think this looks pretty good. I think it compares to the original one just fine. So now I just have to do this a whole bunch more times. Well, this is going to be very repetitious here of just moving the saddle 100 thousandths and taking another pass. I've gone ahead and turned on the oil pump here, so we'll get some good lubrication while we're making these passes. Well, that completes the knurls from this direction. Now I just need to loosen the swivel on the vise and rotate it the opposite direction and do this all over again. I'm sure I could increase the spindle RPM and the feed rate on this and get through this a lot faster, but quite frankly, I'm not in any kind of a rush. This isn't a production shop, and if it was, I certainly wouldn't be doing this. But I don't mind, taking my time and making sure that I get a good finish, right? Get the right cut, and that I don't make any mistakes. Well, I only have about 2 or 3 more passes here, and once this is done, we can take a look and see how we did. Well, that was the last pass here, so we'll get these cleaned up, and I'm going to take these over to the wire wheel here and deburr these, and we'll take a look at them back over at the bench. Well, I couldn't be happier with how these came out. I think I picked the right cutter. I got lucky that it was in the drawer. I think the depth was just right. I really couldn't be happier. I still need to press in the locating pin, so let's go over to the arbor press and take care of that. I've got a couple of 1-inch pieces of some 3/16 inch drill rod here that we're using for the locating pins. With all the milling and everything complete, let's go ahead and install them and see how they fit. Well, I think overall they fit really good. The locating pins and the mounting bolts lined up just right. However, there is a little bit of a lip here, or should I say a difference between the heights of the two jaws. Well, maybe you can see it better here. It's not much of a difference, but I don't know, maybe it's my OCD, but I need to do something about that. Well, that only leaves one thing left to do, and that's to heat treat the jaws. Well, unfortunately, I don't have a heat treat oven to do these the proper way for A2 tool steel, so I'm going to use what I have, which is an oxyacetylene torch. Well, I know I'm going to need to get this up to about 1600 degrees, which is kind of a reddish orange glow. So I'm going to do the best I can here to get these fully soaked. At a minimum, I'll get at least some case hardening. I might not get full hardening here, but I think it'll work for Vise jaws. It is what I have to work with, and until some generous benefactor wants to donate a hotshot oven to the channel, I guess this is just going to have to do. Well, this is an air hardened alloy, so I'm going to let these cool slowly. I'll throw a fiberglass blanket over top of these and let them cool for a couple hours. Well, it's actually been considerably more than a couple of hours. These are, I hope, hard. They didn't cut very easy with the file, but now I need to temper them a bit. So get a little acetylene soot on them. And what I'm going to do is just try to get them warmed up so they're more of a straw color, kind of about the time that the soot from the acetylene burns off, and that should give me a good temper on these so they're a little less brittle than they would be at full hardening. And once again, I'll let these cool slowly under a fiberglass blanket. Well, I let those cool down for a couple of hours and put them back in the vise. And I gotta say, I'm really, really happy with how these came out. Well, and definitely quite the improvement over the original ones that came on the vise when I got it. Now I feel a lot more comfortable about passing this vise on to its next owner. Well, I think that's going to be it for this project. And if you like the video, please leave a comment down below and give it a thumbs up. It really does help a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, I'd appreciate if you consider hitting that subscribe button. And for those that do subscribe and also support the channel through PayPal and Patreon, an extra big thanks to you. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.